Well, it's really a reaffirmation of Budget 2009. I can't imagine it took 84 days to essentially photocopy what was released last year. And this, while the stimulus is welcome, what's very disturbing is no industrial strategy, no real job strategy for Canadians, no supports for families that are needed, no movements to a child care program or anything like that. And I think in these times, projecting a $56 billion deficit, a continuation of planned corporate tax cuts which total $60 billion by 2013. That's almost a radical move at a time when restraint seems to be the order of the day. But one would have hoped, with the level of unemployment in Canada right now and seeming restructuring going on in the manufacturing sector, that there would be a job strategy for people. A bit of tinkering around employment insurance, but nothing that one could call a job strategy. And CUPE also represents hundreds of thousands of municipal workers. There is no infrastructure program for the $100 billion infrastructure deficit in Canada right now. So reaffirming $19 billion in stimulus measure, nobody's going to argue against that. But there isn't a game plan for the next half dozen years to rebuild communities and cities, and businesses and people need that done.
Are you impressed with the recalibration that the government has done in the last 2 months?
I think it could have been done in about 8 hours, not 80 days.
What about public servants and Canadians? What's the effect going to be on public servants and on public service, the service that Canadians get?
Well, I think in terms of services, the healthcare agreement signed by former Prime Minister Martin in 2004 expires in 2013. This budget talks a lot into 2012, 2013, 2014. No mention of a renewal of the Medicare agreement with the provinces. And I would expect premiers in every capital across Canada are going to be concerned about that. It's the number one policy issue in the eyes of Canadians, Medicare. Secondly, from a CUPE point of view, no National Pension Summit. The premiers met last August in Regina, and there's a lot of words about pensions in this budget. There's no cuts to OAS or GIS. There will be consultations in the month of March and April on a future Canada Pension Plan renewal. That's not unwelcome, but the premiers of Canada, 13 territorial and provincial leaders, have asked for a national summit on pensions. Millions of Canadians are marching towards retirement, baby boomers, 11.5 million workers, no workplace pension plan in Canada, not a syllable in the budget about that. So if you live in the short term and think the recession's over, you might be satisfied with this budget. But for a working family without a job right now, this budget doesn't in any way, shape, or form point the direction towards an industrial strategy or a retraining program for Canadians. And I would have hoped Mr. Harper might have revisited Prime Minister Chrétien's erroneous move in the mid-90s to devolve labor force development issues to the provinces. That 20th century decision was wrong then. In the second decade of the 21st century, it's fundamentally wrong that we don't have a national workplace labor force development strategy led by the federal government. So there's a little nip here and a little nip there regarding jobs and communities, but there isn't any.
Surprised you in today's budget, Gary Corbett?
Well, I think that what surprised me was the government's talk about freezing departmental operating money. You know, I mean, departments have to operate and they have to make sure that they can recruit and retain professionals to work in the public service. With some people are going to retire, how do you continue to do the work necessary for Canadians? How do you make sure that the public is protected, and like some of our members do the job of protecting the public trust, protecting the public good? So
it's easy to announce a freeze, but what's the real impact on Canadians of that kind of a freeze?
Well, I think Canadians will see the impact down the road in terms of the services that they get from the public service, and maybe you know, when it looks like things like deregulation, those are things that Canadians should be very much aware of, very much concerned about, because it's up to the government to regulate the quality of life in Canada, the quality of safety of their food system, the safety of their air transportation system. These are government jobs. So if you don't support that through making sure that they're up to date, it can be a very bad thing.
What should Canadians be concerned for when they hear the word deregulation?
Well, I think they should be worried and concerned about being the government passing off the roles that they traditionally should do to the private sector. and letting the private sector take care of it. The fox guarding the henhouse to a certain extent.
Do you think the private sector can protect Canadians the way the public sector can?
No, I don't believe that they can. I believe that the private sector is more concerned about the bottom line than they are about public good.
What concerns you about the budget that you've just heard?
Well, what concerns me is the signal that they've given to our members in terms of the cuts to program or cuts to the budgets of all of the departments. They're going to take $16.6 billion out of the budgets. They're also saying that the wage increases that we negotiated are not going to be funded by this government, but the departments have to find ways to fund that. That suggests to me that the departments are not going to be able to operate in the way they are in providing the programs that they're supposed to provide. And if they start cutting those programs, then obviously that leads to job losses. So there's a lot of the issues in this budget that worry us, and our members are not going to be too happy with at all. You know.
It's easy to say, well, we're going to freeze departmental budgets and that kind of thing, but what's the impact on ordinary Canadians when those kinds of words get said?
Well, when the impact on ordinary Canadians is that the services that they are already diminishing that are provided by government, they're already diminishing, and they're going to be diminished even more. So the government is supposed to be there for the people of the country, but they're supposed to be providing those services. And if they cut the programs, these services are not going to be there. The other thing that they're talking about in here is they say a lot yesterday in the throne speech about deregulation or regulation. Well, you know, if you look at regulation, what does regulation provide us? Does this mean that the food safety in this country is going to be on the chopping block? Transportation safety, you know, like these issues are all regulatory industries, and if they start cutting back in those areas, then people will suffer.
Budget.
Well, in terms of women, we see very little, and that's really a concern for the women's movement across the country. We have been asking, and even the Auditor General has asked for documentation of a transparent gender budget audit that goes on with all programs and all budgets, so that they are looking to see what the impact of budget measures will be on women. And when we have year after year these very large budget documents from the government with barely a mention of the word women, it's very hard to see what the impacts will be. But we did not see anything on the issues that we are pushing for, really beyond $10 million to the Justice Department over 2 years to address the, as they called it, the high incidence of murder and missing Aboriginal women. And beyond that, we don't really see anything on our issues, where at YWCA Canada our priorities are addressing violence against women, women's economic security and poverty, and childcare. And of course, this government is continually silent on childcare.
This is really, as you suggest, a trend, isn't it? The lack of consideration for the issues concerning women.
Yeah, they really don't seem to have a sort of a gender lens on what they're doing. So they do fund Status of Women Canada. They closed the regional offices. They took away the equality mandate. They put it back in, took it away. It's hard to say what's going on. And they've really moved to, you know, direct funding of projects and programs. So in the sense of an overall vision of where women are in the country, it's not what they're looking at. In the sense of a little dollop of money here and there, that's how they seem to like to do things. And it's just not making sense for us, and it's not addressing the big women's issues.
And has your organization done an analysis either of this budget or previous budgets in terms of the impact on women?
We are part of coalitions that have done a lot of work around that. I think you'll see something out from FAFIA tomorrow, the Feminist Alliance for International Action, and also working with Kathleen Leahy. But basically, you know, with the infrastructure spending that went all to, in terms of employment, that went to constructions, which are usually male-dominated in the trades. It's like 93% men. So those jobs that got created were not created. You know, women work much more in social infrastructure and tend to benefit as well from social infrastructure. So we were pressing for that as part of the infrastructure package, but it really wasn't addressed. There are, you know, again, some particular grants to shelters for renovation and things like that, but not the kind of wholesale addressing of women, of issues for families, which is really what women tend